Yeah, and I put this on the crafting section because I know there's an IRL, like, just chatting thing, which I guess this is a little bit closer to. Because I am chatting, I am giving information about how to crochet a hat a little bit. I'm not giving great information about how to crochet a hat. I feel like I'm just telling people to wing it and hope a hat comes out. It's how I do it. And yeah, that's not really the greatest teaching plan. Maybe if I put this in the chatting category, it'd be a little bit closer to this type of style content. But as I said, I'm doing this mostly because I don't think there's really that much significant in the way that I'm crocheting this hat. It's pretty standard, you know, I'm just doing single crochet. There's no tricky double crochets. I'm not doing some type of, like, map. I'm not drawing out how I would necessarily do this. I'm just crocheting. And so because of that, I'm just, yeah, I don't know. Maybe I will make a lace hat. Woohoo! I will crochet a lace hat, and then I will give instructions on how to make a lace hat. And even though I know that will take way too much time, that will take hours and hours of work for me, but, you know, now that I think about it, that sounds kind of fun. I feel like a black lace hat. Oh no, I'm letting my edgy emo side out again. Didn't I say that I wouldn't let that happen? Yeah, okay. So as you can see, it is a little bit longer. Since this yarn is so thick, one row is quite significant. You know, this section's only like 8 rows. So adding one more is a pretty significant increase. So, now that I'm on the brim of the hat, I'm going to still keep my marker here because it's actually even more useful, I'd say, for making the brim of the hat. And here is when I start double crocheting. So when I'm saying this again, double crochet is something completely different. Here's when I start putting 2 stitches into 1 stitch. And this is what is going to give this hat that flat-ish brim. Because it's going to increase the radius of the circle a lot in a really short amount of time. And that's going to give it a pretty, like, it's going to give that inflected. I shouldn't be using math terms that I don't remember. It's going to give that. I'm trying to get as close to a 90-degree angle here. I will not get that because this is a smooth, continuous function, and no cusps are allowed here unless I specifically break and create a new function to create a cusp, and I will not do that. So I'm just kind of making this, so, you know, I'm just trying to do this as one piece of yarn, one long piece of yarn, and whatever that takes. And I will, so basically by putting 2 stitches into every 1 stitch, I am doubling the stitch count. And by doubling the stitch count like this, it is going to make doing 1 row twice the amount of time. Aside from doing this is also kind of a little bit more tricky. It kind of, it's like you just kind of have to put your needle hook into the loop. It's a little bit more tricky than just doing 1 stitch per loop. And so this, even though I generally make the brim only 3 rows, but because it takes a little bit, it's so much more stitch work, it just takes a little bit longer. Like, I would say, I haven't done it for this stream because it's a little bit boring, but generally I do, I count how many stitches are in the hat before I start crocheting. start the brim, and it should be roughly 40. That's just the size that I normally start building up from there. And by doing these 2 stitches into 1 loop, I am now creating 80 stitches, and 80 stitches is a lot. It's really not a lot. In fact, if I was doing something with a normal... Too excited there. If I was doing something with like a normal size yarn or something, I would say 80 stitches is... It really depends on so normal size. I guess kind of like more like the yarn that you would normally get. Wow, that was very descriptive if you never crocheted in your life. It's about half the size of this. Yeah. So if you're gonna do that, it would be probably maybe a 1.5 foot worth of... God. 1.5 foot worth of crochet. So maybe that would be... No, it'd be more than... It'd be like 2 feet. It would be about enough for a sweater, say. Or be like... Nah, maybe half a sweater, yeah? So 80 stitches, I'm complaining about it, but realistically speaking, it's really not that much. I'm just being a sore loser because I want to get this hat done. Because the end in sight is almost a hat. But, yeah, so... Like, if I put this on my head now, you can see how, like, the hat, it used to be going down to here. Now it's starting to curve out, so I'm losing some of that brim length, this isn't a brim. I don't know what the term for this is, but I'm starting to lose some of that vertical height that I built up in the previous rows. So that's always why you want to kind of extend your hat longer. You want to make your hat taller than you think you want to do it, because when you get to the brim, you're going to lose, like, maybe, at least with the yarn I'm doing, you're going to lose maybe like an inch or 2. I guess it's more of a half an inch to an inch. And, yeah. So, like, if you made the hat as tall as you thought it should have been, and then you made the brim, you'll quickly realize that you have made a terrible mistake. And that is how this hat ended up being so bad. But, you know, you gotta keep your mistakes around. That's the only way you learn. And get reminded of all your mistakes every single time you see it. Not the greatest feeling in the world, but one must endure. So, I'm about 3/4 through this. It is not the most interesting thing in the world. So in this particular hat, I'm doing all single crochet. That's really just kind of important if you're, as a single crochet is good for very structural things, which this is the kind of hat I want to have, a very structural hat. If I wanted to make a more flexible hat, more stretchy hat, I'd probably actually include a lot more double crochet in this, because you have more, double crochet is a little bit longer, so you're making more like rectangles instead of squares, so you have a little bit more flexibility in the sides of those sides of the rectangle, as opposed to these squares, where you don't have as much. Also, through the course of this talking thing, I just realized I have shifted my chair from where I originally put this, which was roughly so that my face was in the middle. Not really, as I said, I'm trying to block out a lot of junk in my room. But I scooted away from that just out of habit. And now we're actually now we're back to the beginning. Wow. Figuring out how to straighten 101. And we got 4 more. 4 more loops before we hit my marker. This marker is actually pretty arbitrary. Normally I try and go back to find where I started off the hat, or where I first made the first loop for this hat, to make sure it's a little bit more precise. But here I was just like, it's at the right length, whatever, just do it. And yeah, it's not the most ideal way of, it's not the most precise way. I might end up with like a side that's a little bit too long and a side that's a little bit too short. But I'm also giving it to a small child. So, and with that knowledge that I'm giving it to a small child, I really hope these hats actually fit them. Some of the kids I'm giving these to are like 6 years old. And I think 6-year-olds have smaller heads. Pretty sure about that. Like, you know, my hats as a child no longer fit me, and I'm very sad because they're very cute. But, you know, maybe it'll all work out in the end. Maybe it'll just turn out to be beautiful all along. And maybe the child will grow up to have, maybe the child I'm giving it to just has an unusually large head, and the fact that I made a hat for an adult for a child does not matter, because they had a big head. Always possible. When I was talking about making these hat things, my mom was like, Miranda, if you're making hats for everyone, you have to make your brother's hat, like, big. Like, really big. Like, I made this fish hat for him, right? Like, my mom made a hat that basically looked like a shark was eating his head. And she was like, yeah, if you make that hat, you're gonna have to make it huge. I had to redo that hat 3 or 4 times because his head was just so big. It's like, this right, Mom, I'm just gonna, like, give him a bucket and tell him it's a hat, because you're, like, way exaggerating this. Your brother can't have that big of a head. He doesn't look that out of proportion. At least I think so. At least, yeah, he doesn't look, yeah, he's just a human, whatever. But, yeah, I don't know. If I'm gonna make my brother a hat, though, I do have some pink yarn. It's not hot pink, though, which may disappoint him, because he has bad taste in colors. But I do have some pink yarn, and I think he would enjoy that. Or maybe some purple. Black, I think he would think that would look like a fedora. He is a programmer, so maybe I should make him a white hat. And, he will laugh at me and tell me I'm lame because I am using hacker terminology that I don't understand. And I will say, yes, I am. Well, are you going to take your hat or not? And like the rest of my cousins, he will probably take this hat and then throw it in the back of the closet, where it will never be seen ever again. Although there is a chance, though, that he'll dig it up for like some wedding or something and wear it. Though, I don't know. If I was gonna do a white hat, like, I don't know, white hats are pretty cute. Like those white wide brim hats, those are pretty cute. But like, I would, you know, maybe put some like flowers on it or something. I would dress it up a bit. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like the only hats dudes are currently expected to wear are baseball caps, and that's not a really high fashion type of hat. That's just kind of a, I mean, that's your everyday kind of hat. I'm saying all this, and now I feel really sad for, like, men who want to wear hats. Or, like, what happens if you're going bald, right? Like, and you're not ashamed of, like, losing your hair or anything, but, like, I heard when you go bald, like, you start getting sunburns on your scalp.